Welcome, everyone, to the California MUFON Radio Show. I'm your host, Lorien Fenton. And you guys, you want to know why I'm laughing? I'm laughing because poor MJ and I both got hit by the Microsoft update disaster, as I call it. Every time it happens, it closes down all the things I'm working in, and it shuts itself off, and it reboots, and then it sits there at the screen where you got to put in your password. And you're going, what happened to everything? Of course, it all does decide to come back later, but what a nightmare. I'm telling you, poor MJ, he comes home, he's getting ready to do the show, walks down into the studio, and wouldn't you know it, his computer's starting an update. So he's sitting there, and he's waiting and waiting. So it's now 8:15, 8:14 my time Pacific, so we've waited like 15, 20 minutes for his poor little PC to update. So there you go. What can I say? It's always fun. Good old Microsoft. Oh, I'm telling you. Anyhow, let's see. Our guest tonight's Grant Cameron, and he's going to join us at the bottom of the hour. So that gives me 15 minutes to tell you guys all the craziness that's been going on in my life. Let's see. Where do I even want to begin? Well, on Monday, on my show on both shows, as a matter of fact, I went through a big rant about being about what happened at my MUFON meeting. And I actually have the results of what happened to this whole thing. And I think I'm going to tell you guys the story. It won't take long, but it's interesting. It's very interesting. I guess I'm getting old, and I guess I'm getting cranky because, boy, I was on a tear on Monday. I was so mad on Monday. I think I burned up airwaves on Monday. Seriously. So here's what happened. We're at our meeting on Saturday. We always go to the Petaluma Senior Center. I've been going there 6.5 years. I've been on a contract with them for 6.5 years. What I am is a volunteer with the city of Petaluma, and I am volunteering. My nonprofit is volunteered in, and we give them half of our, or a little more than half of our income from the day's event, and it's called a donation, and everybody's happy, and this has been going on for 6.5 years. So I'm getting ready for the event, and I'm the speaker. So I'm kind of running around going crazy, and all of a sudden, I walk up to the front area where my buddy Don is taking the money. I got to tell you guys, another sidetrack here for you for a moment. If it wasn't for Don Bieri, I would not be continuing my MUFON group this year. Don has decided that he's going to drive down from Sacramento every Saturday just to sit at the door and take the money for me so I can set up for the event. Isn't that sweet? I mean, unbelievable guy. Probably one of my biggest supporters. I'm his biggest fan. He and his wife, Louise, amazing, amazing people. And they go to all the conferences, and they are so sweet. I mean, I hope I'm that sweet when I'm in my 80s. I don't think I'm going to be. I think I'm going to be a nasty old woman. And after you hear what happened, you're probably all going to agree with me. Anyhow, so what happens is I'm standing up there talking to Don real quickly, and I have to run back up to the front to get the computer connected some more, and I hear a big crash. And I'm like, oh my God, what the hell happened? So I walk out into the foyer area where the reception desk is, and they've got a big glass. They've got this door that slides from one side to the other out of glass. It's a, reception area with a glass sliding wall. So basically about, a little less than 2/3 up to the ceiling, this thing is that big. And it has fallen into the office. The middle pane, the one that slides, has fallen into the office. And the computer monitor's knocked down. There's a broken, plastic holder. There's stuff everywhere. And I'm like, what happened? And the guy, I felt so bad for him. It's one of my new guys. This is only a second meeting. And he is the guy, by the way, that was at the thrift store and found the JFK album for me for my Christmas present. And anyhow, long story short, the guy is just a really sweet guy. And he touched it. But I don't blame him what he did. Here's what on the window, it says, there's a big sign that says, "This window closed." And he was laughing at it, and he's pointing it out to the people around him. He goes, yeah, they have to put a sign up when it's closed to tell you it's closed because there's a bunch of seniors hair. They can't tell it's closed because they're probably blind. And yeah, he was making a joke, kind of this whole thing. And he walked over and he kind of tapped on it, the glass, and it fell in. And oh, thank God it didn't break. That was like my only concern was, oh, thank God it didn't break. So that's all I was worried about. So we kind of snaked up the monitor from the cords because we didn't go in, we didn't crawl in or anything like that, but we put the monitor back up. We tried to straighten out the desk as best we could. And we took the glass gently out and we stood it up right in front of the thing. And I'm thinking, oh God, what do I have to do? Now I've got to start my meeting. I'm already late. I'm kind of flipping out. I'm like, what the heck am I going to do? And Ed, one of the guys that had, comes to the meeting from the senior center, who's there every day, says to me, oh, don't worry about it. I'm coming in Monday morning. I'll tell him what happened. So I'm like, oh, okay, that'll work. You know, at that point, the minute he said he'd tell them on Monday morning, I was like, okay, that's fine. I don't have to worry about this for another freaking second. And I didn't. So that's what happened. And then we all left. I turned on the alarm, locked the place up. There's nobody going to get in, blah, blah, blah. So, and I knew the renters on Sunday as well. They're very conscientious, good people. I think it's NNA or NA, Narcotics Anonymous. Yeah. And I've run into them a couple times, and because I've left things there. Like my laptop just sitting there on the in the foyer area, and I walked in, and there's all these ex-druggies, and no one touched my laptop, of course. I mean, these are good people. I wasn't worried about that, so I just didn't think anything of it. And I thought, if they're renting to people that are going to steal from them, then they got a problem, right? So I'm like, I'm laying in bed. It's like, noon or 1 on Monday, and I'm getting up and getting ready to start my day because I went to bed at 8 a.m. And I look at my phone when I sit down at my desk, and it has blown up. I mean, it's like all these 707 area codes, and I'm like, what is going on? What happened? I'm really freaking out. And I start dialing back, and I dialed the first one, and it's the girl at the senior center. Oh, my God, we thought we gotten broken into, and on and on, went on and on. And I'm like, what happened? Did someone break in after the glass was out? I'm like, oh, yeah, did Ed tell you? Oh, no, he didn't show up till 11 o'clock to tell us. Like, great. So he slept in. So they walked in. They thought they'd been burglarized. And I'm thinking to myself now, what burglar would not break the glass? That's my first thought. But, hey, I'm just logical. What can I say? So, and then I'm thinking, and then I said to her, did you look around the room to see if anything had been stolen? That's just, because if I'd walk in there, if that was my job in my office and I'd saw the glass, just laid up there right in front of the window, and the money still on the floor and everything's still there, that when I left on Friday, I would have thought, well, something must have happened, and I'll find out eventually, and I wouldn't have worried about it, and I would have gone about my job, and I would have gotten somebody in there to fix the glass, because I probably would have figured out, well, if it's down on the ground, something's not right here, okay? But I wouldn't have jumped to the conclusion that I was robbed and that they broke in, and they gently put the glass on the ground and didn't break it while they were robbing the place, which I think is even quite more funny, but what can I say? So I'm getting reamed for this, and all I said to her was, well, I'm sorry, I didn't think it was a big deal. And didn't Ed tell you what happened? She was like, no, he didn't show up till 11 o'clock. I'm like, well, I'm sorry that you jumped to all these conclusions. Well, she called her boss called the police, and the police were even kind of laughing at them, because I said to her, well, didn't the police, how can they take a report when nothing's missing? She goes, well, that's what they said. I said, yeah, they don't take a report when nothing's missing, because obviously you haven't been broken into. So anyhow, I'm like going, this is just nuts, right? So, and then they say to me, and this is the corporate jargon that puts me through the roof, folks. I mean, I absolutely go through the roof when I hear this. You've broken your trust with us. We can't trust you anymore. We don't understand why you don't think it was a big deal. And I'm like, okay, this is something else you guys don't know about me. If you've ever heard of Anderson Consulting and those type of organizations that train big corporations for negotiation, conflict resolution, sexual harassment, blah, blah, blah. The list goes on and on. I used to write all those workbooks for 3 of those companies in the Bay Area. And I did some stuff for Salesforce.com around this, and also Anderson Consulting. So, and I used to help the people train these people. I used to work for a company that used to train all of the Lawrence Livermore lab scientists. And let me tell you, if that wasn't a hoot or something that you wouldn't believe, that's another story for another day. I'll tell you guys someday about how I went into the lab after 9/11 and I got weighed and I was almost naked in the process. But anyhow, long story short, I'm thinking, what the hell is going on? These people are just flipping out over absolutely nothing. And they said, we have to have a meeting with you immediately to go over your contract and see if we even want you here anymore. Maybe you should go somewhere else. And I'm thinking, oh my God, all this over a window. I was like, oh my God. So I'm freaking out. On Monday night, I'm on my radio show telling this whole story, like, and I'm freaking out. And I couldn't sleep on Monday night. I mean, it's just when things like this happen and I'm being like criticized for not doing something. Now, I do get it, folks. I probably should have left him a note or called or something, but my thought was, well, if worse comes to worse, I had to drop off some, I'm holding them right in my hand. I have to drop the roster off on Monday or Tuesday. So I thought I'll just swing by on Monday afternoon before my radio show and drop these off and tell her about the glass. If that was just like my worst case scenario, I'll just drop it off late in the afternoon. Well, boy, all this happened before I could even do that one. So anyhow, so I meet with them on Tuesday at 3:00. So I've had no sleep and I'm in this meeting and I'm sitting there. And of course, here's what I said on Monday night, which I probably shouldn't have said, but this is the truth, you guys. My thought was this was a small man, okay, that has $100,000 worth of debt. He's got an MBA, and all he could land was a job as a community director. Okay, so that's what I said on the air Monday. I felt really bad because I'm going into this meeting having already researched this poor guy to the point of, he's chopped liver. But he turned out to be a pretty nice guy. But my assessment was correct. Hate to tell y'all. And so they finally, they offered me a whole bunch of choices. I can sign a contract for a lot more money. I can become an instructor and do a donation, all this stuff. And they basically were just like, we don't want you here, but here are all your options. And they figured I would take a hike and run. Well, I didn't. I decided to take one of the options where I'm going to have to probably pay some money out of my own pocket. But you know what? That's okay. I'm not worried about it. And they turned out to be pretty good folk. But, I still was like, oh my God, all this over a piece of glass. It just seemed to me like it's so crazy. And the worst and the funniest part about it all, and the worst point of all this, is that the glass didn't break. And I was so thrilled about that I couldn't understand why they were so upset about this darn event that happened. Oh, and the other thing they did is when I called and I said, oh, and by the way, in spite of all this glass thing that happened and what have you, you guys never leave me the remotes anymore. And the girl had the nerve to tell me that we didn't deserve the remotes because she was afraid something would happen to them. I was like, okay, great. I've been there 6.5 years. The remotes have been out all the 6.5 years. By the way, she just started, and this new guy started a few months ago. So all this has been since they started. So I don't get any remotes anymore. But one of my producers had a great idea. He said, Lorien, just go buy a universal remote at Walmart. So that's what I'm going to do because I don't deserve the remote for the TV. So, okay, anyhow. So that's my story. Now, I know I'm feeling guilty now that I blasted this all over the airwaves for the last 2 days, but the bottom line is it's just pretty amazing to me what people will do to get it to the point where you're giving them more and more money. And now they've got to have insurance and, all these things that I never had to deal with before. And it was so nice. And, 6.5 year run, I guess I should have counted my blessings. I knew it was coming at some point eventually, but I was hoping I'd get 10 years out of them before everybody would notice that we're not, doing what everybody else is doing. But what bothers bothers me more than anything is the fact that the Narcotics Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, the Overeaters Anonymous, all the anonymous groups that are in there, they don't have to do anything like I have to do. It's just the UFO people, of course. And, if it had been anybody else that had poked on that glass and it had fallen down, I don't think they would have been, admonished like I was. So anyhow, I don't know what to say. It was pretty wild, and I had to live through it, no sleep, and the whole bit. I just hate conflict. I hate conflict like that. So I don't know. Maybe you guys think I was being too rough on them, and maybe I should have cared more. I don't know, but I just didn't think it was a big deal. I just really didn't, and now I'm feeling guilty, and the whole thing is just a big old mess, and I just hate stuff like that. And the reason I brought this all up is because I always have that feeling every time I owe people money or something else is going on, or I've got a taxes are due, and it's just one of those things. I guess when you've got things like that hanging over your head, they just aren't that much fun. I got to thinking life as I got older isn't as fun as it used to be. And this is just all part of it. This is just making me think about how old I really am. And I don't think like they do. They're all 20 and 30 years old. I just don't think like they do. I've seen too much. A piece of glass on the floor, not broken, is really not a big deal to me. And I just didn't understand what was going on. So yeah, it's a whole new world out there. I guess the first thought you would have when you're 25 now is, oh my God, we've been broken into and the whole world's coming to an end. And if it had been me at 25, which, I was running a big company at 25, I would have walked in, saw that and went, oh God, it's the least of my worries today. So I guess I'm just non-pulsed by stuff. And that's a problem. I guess I'm going to have to learn the lesson the hard way. So there we go. Okay, let's bring on our guest tonight, if MJ will help me. Oh, and guess what else is happening? While he's getting Grant Cameron in here, UFO Con is happening this year, and Grant is going to be one of my keynote speakers, and he's going to do something he's never really done before. Well, he's done it, but he's going to add as much new stuff as he can, and there's going to be a lot of tete-a-tete between he and Melinda Leslie about their knowledge of the working group and the Bigelow group and just all the things that are happening out there in Disclosure Land. Are we having trouble, MJ? Because I can grab him if you need me to. Just let me know. And so anyhow, Grant and Melinda are going to be quite the hit. And the reason I know this and the reason I can tell you guys this is because I was in a hotel room with them in Laughlin, Nevada, and I recorded almost 2 hours of information between the two of them that nobody else in this world seriously knows about. And the only reason besides Randy Copain, myself, Melinda Leslie, and Grant Cameron, we're probably the only four who know some of this information, because this is 40 years of research between Melinda and Randy and what Grant has been doing. And I have been privy to what Grant's been doing actually for quite some time, and what Melinda and Randy Copain have been doing for quite some time. So as you guys all know, I think we mentioned this on the show before, there's been a lot of us in the background that haven't talked for years and years about what's been going on. Now, I'm going to say one other. Oh, shoot. I didn't look at the text there, MJ. He's online. You want me to grab him? I'll just grab him. Okay, here we go. Let's see if this works. It might put you on hold, though. I don't know. It's not working. Oh, that's interesting. There he is. Ah, there you are.
I never answer on this thing. I can see you calling, but and then suddenly it said join call, so I joined the call.
Great. All is good. Thank you. Oh my God. Well, I was just telling everybody about what an amazing night we're going to have at California UFO Con. It's going to be so wild, because I was telling them there's only 4 people on the planet right now that know what we know, and that's you, me, Melinda, and Randy Copain. And guess what? Randy may show up at the conference.
There you go. Yeah.
I know. So this is going to be very interesting. And I'm sure we'll have lots of new stuff by then. Did you get the latest news that, what is his name? Elizondo?
Elizondo?
Elizondo said something yesterday that there's going to be all kinds of footage being released this year.
I knew that before. I knew that they have 24 films, apparently.
Oh, 24. See, you know even more. I wasn't paying much attention.
Oh, I know all the gossip. I know everything.
24 films. That's 2 a month for all of 2018, right?
They have 24 films. They have 74 reports, 36 reports and 38 technical reports. They have all this hardware. I actually showed some of it in one of my update lectures. And what's the other thing they have? They have the hardware. They have the reports. Geez, okay, I'll think of it later on. But they've got the 24 films is pretty big. But the thing is that the Department of Defense is now saying, and we knew this right from day one because I had a reporter who I talked into filing an FOA, and he phoned the Defense Department as this story broke on December 16th, and the Defense Department said, we didn't release anything. And now the big dispute is on. The Defense Department is saying, we got no film, we got no documents, never heard of it. No, it's the old standard FOA reply, we looked and we couldn't find anything. And there's some problems with the film that was released, and it's like dead end road already. And there was actually I got a guy who knew the New York Times reporter Ralph Blumenthal to contact him and say there's a problem with the film, and the Defense Department's not saying they're not releasing any. They didn't release anything, and he was absolutely furious. He said, "I'm embarrassed to ask this. Do you think I'm totally stupid?" And it's like, wow, we just had to sort of back off. But there is some problems, like John Greenwald. Greenwald filed already in October, and he was told in October they looked for this group. There is no such group. Eric Davis, who's the chief physicist for the Institute for Advanced Studies in Austin, where Hal Puthoff is. He's the chief physicist for Hal Puthoff. Says that what they call the COC, the chain of command. That's the main thing or the chain of custody is what you need. Right. And that basically says that somebody in the Defense Department says, this is a legitimate film. It was taken by the Department of Defense. And according to Eric Davis, that will never be released because they're saying it's classified. They're saying it will the film that they took will identify what type of sensors we have on our planes. And that's classified material. So you got to take them at their word. Yes, this film was released, but we can't give you the chain of custody to prove that it's actually a government film. And that's the big line. I always say that with this entire thing, the government has been in a position since 1947. It's always the same thing, that it's fine to say the government's got all this stuff, but to actually go across the line where the government says, okay, we've actually got, we're actually investigating this. We actually have film. We actually have hardware. They still haven't done that. And it's to cross that line. It's a very difficult line to cross because then the sort of the cover up is over. Then it's sort of like, oh, the government actually confirmed that they're lying. So now we're back to square one, and the government is saying, well, I know the New York Times put out this story and the Washington Post put out this story, but we haven't got anything. We don't know what you're talking about.
I know. And it's a huge problem. Well, let me throw something at you. Have you seen David Sarita's new Portal to Ascension talk that he gave afterwards about the film?
No.
Oh, boy, this is going to blow your shorts. Here it comes. That film was released in 2015. It had different audio, and it was also in a scientific journal, frame by frame.
Okay, I'll have to look at that because I released when I released it already back in. I showed it back in October, the film, and it was released on a German science fiction film website, and nobody knows. They have the name of the person, but nobody really knows who the person is. It was on there in 2007. And
really? Okay, because
it's a different. It's the sort of there's two different films, and this is the second one without the audio. And I show it. I showed it a couple times, and that's what I'm saying. There is problems with this film, and then there's the thing about the wind. Although, of course, I'm sort of in the middle of this thing, so I sort of put it out in my updates, and then of course I get hammered because I released some audio from an F-18. I think it was the Thunderbirds talking about wind. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, they attack me. You don't understand what's going on. Yours is a ground. Theirs is the flight data, the black box voice thing, and sort of. And so the problem with it is that you have to know every technical aspect of how do they actually tape those conversations. Because I did an interview with John Lear. I don't know if you saw it. And John Lear immediately said, this is total garbage. Pilots don't talk this way. They don't talk about wind, like the wind's coming out of the west at 120 knots. That's not the way to talk about wind. And so he had a bunch of different things. And the thing with the mask, that you're wearing this mask, and he said that the mic inside the mask, it's a totally quiet environment. You don't have this roaring noise in the background. And of course, I put that up on my Facebook. I did this 11-minute interview with John where he's talking about all the problems with the film. And of course, then it's just like I got totally attacked. It's like John Lear, he's an old guy, and he believes there's they got a million people on the moon and all this sort of stuff. And I'm saying just because he has some strange ideas doesn't mean he's lying. People always has this thing. If they can find out that Lorien Fenton has got a parking ticket, everything you've ever said is discounted because we can go this, and that's always the route they do. And of course, I'm sort of the messenger now, so it's sort of like that's why I said when we were going to do the interview, I'm saying I'm getting a little tired of talking about this because I'm just like under attack constantly. Because I'm doing the Pandolfi on one side, and he's saying that it's this is a Scientology scam, and that all these guys are Scientologists and they're running another scam to get money. And then, of course, once you bring up his name, then you get attacked because you brought up his name. And it's like, wow, they take it very seriously. It's almost like a religion, the UFO world.
It is.
Where you put out something, boy, and get ready to get attacked.
I am so glad you said that. I got to tell you a quick little story. Yeah. I was helping a guy put on Alien Con this last year. Yeah. And the History Channel was involved, and Giorgio, and the whole 9 yards. Yeah. And I know him. I met him right before the event happened, kind of on email, and his crew. And they were wonderful to me. They invited me to do he said, can you get a bunch of people in the UFO community together in the Bay Area and do a panel? And can you speak? And I was like, sure, I can do all that for you. He goes, yeah, Avery told me you're the go-to gal for MUFON in the area. And I said, sure, I'll help you out. Uh-huh. So, and he came to one of my MUFON meetings. Really nice guy, okay? So I told him at the MUFON meeting, I just took him aside and he said, I'm not going to say his name. I said, you got to understand something. This isn't just a convention. He puts on monster conventions, Comic-Con conventions, those kind of things, right? Uh-huh. Yeah. And I said, you have no idea what kind of ground you've gotten yourself into. I said, these people are a cult. They're a religion. Everybody has an opinion, and they're going to let you know it. And he goes, oh, it can't be that bad. Well, okay, so we're at the convention. It's Saturday night. It started on Friday. It's now Saturday. Every room where there was a speaker like myself or Sasha Lesson or anybody around any of this stuff was jam-packed, and people were flowing out the doors, and they were pissed off that they couldn't get into them because he thought that they had a room that held 1,200 people, and they thought only the ancient alien guys were big enough to get that many people into their thing. Wow. They had no idea that we all follow everybody. It's not like Comic-Con where you got 6 different big acts like Star Trek and this and that and whatever. and then a few of the small ones, you go into their rooms and there's 50 people there and everybody's happy, right?
Yeah.
Oh no, it didn't work like that at all. There were people mad. He was being chased down the hallway, going, "How come I couldn't get in to see so and so?" And he hid out all Saturday afternoon. We couldn't find him. We didn't know what was going on. He calls me at dinner on Saturday night. He goes, "Oh my God, I've got to redo rooms tomorrow. I've got to do all this. Can you do another panel? Can you get Sasha and Janet to do one in the big room that seats 1,200 people?" Which, by the way, we filled with 1,000 people. Wow. And there were 15,000 people there, Grant. It was insane. It was just the most insane thing I'd ever seen in my life. And when it was all said and done, he walked up to me and gave me a big hug, and he goes, "Oh my God, you were right. It's like a cult, it's like a religion." He goes, I will never underestimate it again." And yeah, we were just laughing because, it's so true. We're very passionate. We're a very passionate group. And, all of my Facebook messages, I was talking to my boss about this the other day. Her Facebook gets 2 or 3 little hits every once in a while. It's all her friends like, "Oh, I went to the park and dealt with the dog," or, whatever. You look at mine and it's like 5 miles long in 10 minutes. It's everybody spouting their opinion about UFOs and aliens, and everybody's at each other's throats. And it's like a constant bickering family. And
Oh, yeah. It's just, I even told, I run a lot of my stuff on YouTube now. And Desta, you remember Desta? Desta Barnaby.
Tell her I said hi.
Yeah, she puts it up for me because she's more technically, attuned to that stuff. So she puts it up, and then she said, "Oh, are you watching?" Maybe there was one particular one that she was interested. She thought some of the comments would lead us to new.
Attention shoppers, clean up on aisle 14. Clean up on aisle 14. Someone dropped a jar of pickles. Pickles. Kosher pickles.
Beatboxing at a big box store. Surprising. What's not surprising? How much you could save by switching to Geico.
A red minivan has the lights on in the parking lot.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Geico.
To people and stuff like that, I said, you can watch the comments. I got thin skin. It's just like, you can't even watch it. It's just like unbelievable.
Oh my God.
People,
you know what? I just turn them off. If I'm doing any YouTube stuff, I turn off the comments because I'm not even going to take it. Grant, I got to tell you, on my shows on Monday afternoons, I have not been in the chat room for 5 years. Because I got tired of the arguing in the chat room with me. It's like, if you guys want to listen to my show, listen to it to, maybe glimpse a little new information and cook dinner, right? Yeah. That's what I do, exactly. But not to sit there and argue with me the whole show. And you know what? I had to stop having people call in for the same reason, because they just sit there and argue with my guest. And I'm like, okay, I'm done. It's not going to happen anymore. So there you go. It's a wild world, but it is wild. So anyhow, we'll do a lot more disclosure at the conference. I think we should just save up for what we got, because you're getting tired of being, bombarded, aren't you?
Well, it's a big thing. Everybody wants updates. I'm doing another one tomorrow, and then I'm doing one on the weekend for Portals to Ascension. I'm doing a thing because I've done 4 of them, and they're all 30 minutes long. So I've done 2 hours of updates on new material that's come out. And everybody's talking, and some of the YouTube updates I did had 100 and some odd thousand hits and stuff. But the thing is, you sort of get inundated with material, and it's not so much the amount of work; it's the sort of the divisiveness of, you're like, I sort of got in between this fight between the Pandolfi crowd that believes this is all Scientology scam, and the Tom DeLonge crowd that figures, we're about to get disclosure and stuff. And you get in between those two, and it's like, wow. And it's like they're attacking me because they can't attack the other side. And it was that kind of stuff that you just sort of like, oh, wow. And yet the amount of material, the amount of people, because when you start getting those kind of hits, I start getting contacted by people that I never would have got contacted, like some pretty interesting people who are really good at what's going on inside the government and how the system works and stuff like that. And so it's advantageous in that way that I've got a lot of material. Every day I get, 2 or 3 new items. Like, for example, I'll give you a couple because you and I are both interested in John Alexander. John Alexander did an interview. This was January the 3rd, so maybe less than a week ago, on a podcast. And on that podcast, I'm listening to him, and he's actually way less skeptical than he used to be. And he basically said, yes, I was on the outside. I knew some stuff was going on with the Tom DeLonge thing. I only talked to Tom on the phone one time, whatever. And I had heard this in the background. I'd heard his name bounced around and stuff like that. But he basically said, yes, I've known these guys on the panel. I've known these guys for years. A lot of them are good friends of mine and stuff like that. And I knew what was going on. And then at one point, because he went to see Chris Bledsoe. So he went to see Chris. I do know that. And he wrote a whole chapter in his book. He was very impressed with Chris, with all the stuff, the burning tree, getting healed from Crohn's, and this sighting thing where Chris said, they're here. I think they're here. And then this thing appears in the sky, and John was just sort of blown away. So and I never would have thought to ask John this. And it was just so revealing, because he said to John, he said, so why did you go see Chris? Like, well, why would you go across the country to see Chris? And there's this hesitation, and John goes, my sponsor set it up, and he made it. He made it. He said, my sponsor. And as soon as I heard that, I go, that's Jim Semivan, because that's the guy that he's the experiencer. He's the guy that sort of befriended Chris Bledsoe, and is sort of was covering Chris Bledsoe's back, and had known about Chris's story right from the word go. So when John says my sponsor, I'm thinking, he's not supposed to be in anything. He's retired. And he's saying my sponsor. And then I heard from another one, one of these real interesting guys from the inside. I really don't know who he is, but he's basically sending me, stuff that's going on and stuff that I never would have got without him. And then he tells me one of the other very high level Avery guys, and he used the word sponsor. And so he said, who's John Alexander's sponsor? And he said, this other guy's talking about a sponsor too. So which means there's money floating around in this thing, and that John is more sort of involved. And then the other thing I got was from Pia Knudsen. I don't know if you know Pia, right? From Denmark. I don't. No, she's interesting. So she contacted me. She runs a bunch of conferences over there. I'm going to speak over there in May, I think, and beginning of May. But anyway, she contacted me, and I didn't know this, that John, as I don't know if you realize that Tom DeLonge contacted the Free Organization. And I do know that. I know all about it. Yeah. He was, and Ray said, they were going to offer to pay their salaries and stuff like that. And, there's different views as to why DeLonge would try to go for the files. And I think for DeLonge, he's just a storyteller. He wants to make movies. And if you can get a Chris Bledsoe story, I mean, you can make millions of dollars. So there's lots of Chris Bledsoe stories inside the free files. I don't really see that much really sort of, diabolical about what he's doing. But anyway, so she contacted me. She said, John's writing a chapter in their book. I said, are you kidding me? And so I go and check. Sure enough, he's writing. They've got this book coming out on all these different aspects of the experiencer thing. And John is writing one of the chapters. And it's my God. It's on exactly what I said. Like I give John a gold star in my book, because he says exactly what I say. As I pointed out numerous times, if you go to John Alexander's website, when you look at UFOs, it's not UFOs, it's UFOs phenomenology. And that is the term that the CIA apparently has always used. It's phenomenology. It's not UFOs. It's all the same thing. So it's ghosts, it's near-death experiences, it's portals, it's consciousness. And John always is very open. When he talks about it, he said consciousness is going to be a key element to this thing. So he's writing this thing on contact modalities, that we should see them all as one thing. So he's written this chapter, which is exactly the right thing. But I can just imagine when the experiencers find out that John Alexander has written a thing, and Ray Hernandez has said he has no association with Free. It's just because he has this chapter, or he has this thing which Free agrees with, and I agree with it as well, with this chapter he's writing. But it's kind of weird. You hear, like, every day you hear another story, and it's like, whoa, man, all these names that you and I have probably heard about for 30 years are all still the same names. They're still in this new group. They're still floating around. That's right. The Valets and the Kit Greens and now Gary Nolan from Stanford and Hal Puthoff and John Alexander, and it's all the same names. It's just there's new information. new places for them to go and find answers to stuff, and they're all been gravitated back, and it's almost like the good old days of Bill Moore or John Alexander's group in the 1980s, the Advanced Physics Theoretical Working Group. It's like same old thing. Now they call it I don't know if you heard this. This is one of my
No,
things.
I haven't heard this one. Tell me.
It's called the Cosmic Club. There's a woman, the woman that discovered, and Chris used to talk to me about this. There is this group, and this is almost like the Avery. Like people always think the Avery is this, group that, this government-sponsored group. It's nothing. It's just a bunch of guys who were given names by Bill Moore, Avery names, whatever, and they know each other. And they've all got they've all interacted with the UFO phenomenon. And now it's not called the Avery. Now it's called the Cosmic Club. And Diane Pasulka talks about it. And Diane Pasulka is the head of religion and philosophy at the University of North Carolina.
Her on my radio show. She hasn't responded to me.
Oh, so she hasn't?
No.
She was on Greg Bishop's show. If you listen, Mysterioso.
Yes, I did listen to it, and I think she's fascinating. I love her stuff.
And she's she's been sort of dragged into this thing because she's a sort of a high level person. She's good friends with Jacques Vallée. Jacques Vallée's in this thing, so they drag her in. And she calls it the Cosmic Club. And I heard that there are 40 people in this group. And these are people like the Avery, who are people, very high-level people that you probably wouldn't know, but they're main people at universities, academics and stuff, who just don't want anybody to know that they're doing UFOs. And this is this high-level thing where they can work with each other, they can exchange information. It's like the new Avery. So I even had a list. There was first was the Avery in the 1980s. Then there was John Alexander's group, which is called the Advanced Physics Theoretical Working Group, and we'll be talking a bit about that at your conference. And they had 20 people, and I'll name all the people that were at that group. And then you have Joe Firmage starts the ISSO group in 1989, and they all suddenly gravitate to there because he's got money and he's starting to work on advanced physics and stuff, and they all run to that group to find out what they can find there. And then you have the NIDS group, run by Bigelow, and they all were in the NIDS group, and then they started this Cosmic Club, and then Tom DeLonge had some money and some influence, and they all have joined the Tom DeLonge thing. So it's just this, and I keep telling people it's the same thing. It goes over and over, and it's year after year. It's the same playbook. And these guys are there, and everybody thinks this is like Tom DeLonge. This is new. Oh, this is like, man, we've got to change. And I'm going like, you must have only been around for a couple of years because this is not new at all.
Cracks me up. I swear to God. I got to tell you something about John Alexander. Yeah. And I'm going to do true confessions here tonight on my radio show. Yeah, I know. I never trusted the man. I mean, I don't know what it is. You know how it is? You get around people and you just kind of go, I don't know. It's like I just never wanted to talk to him or anything. And I've had plenty of opportunity to do so. And I just go, no, that's okay. Y'all go off and have lunch, right? I'm at the conferences. I'm like, I just don't feel it, man. Yeah. So I'm sitting there with, I don't know, I think I told you this story, and I'm not sure if I should be telling it, but I'm going to. I'm sitting there with a friend of mine, and she says to me, I just had a woman come up to me that said that the guy that was in her abduction interrogating her on the in the underground base, her MyLabs experience, is at the conference. Mm-hmm. And I said, that is so bizarre. I wonder who it is. And she goes, you're not going to believe it. And I said, tell me. And she goes, it's John Alexander. And I said, holy Moses. Okay. So that was many years ago. Okay. So now I know that John Alexander is playing both sides of the fence. And that's why my hackles were always up around him, because he is. Now, many years have gone by. I made a snap decision in that moment that he's, obviously never to be trusted. And he's denied it, as the day is long when he's been confronted about this. And believe me, she wasn't the only one, okay? He's denied ever having done anything like that. And I get that, and if you're playing both sides of the fence, you got to, cover your rear. And I get it. But I always thought he was the devil incarnate until this year. And then I finally realized something. If it wasn't him doing it, It would be somebody really nasty doing it. And apparently he's not that nasty when he's doing it. Okay. Mm-hmm. So if I got abducted to the My Labs place, I think I'd rather have John sit in front of me just asking me some questions than some reptilian like a lot of other people have had, or, threatening to rip my arms off, or, these horrible things that go on, that if it's just John there, I think I could handle it a lot better. Maybe if that was part of his job back then, hey, not so bad. And he's been keeping track of everything, all these years. And so, okay. And the part that really blew me away lately is I never listened to a word he had to say because of my prejudgment, because of, of his material, because of what I know about him, right? So finally I ordered his books, and I finally started reading and listening to his interviews, and I realized something, Grant. He and I are on the same freaking page. And I almost
that's what I said. Yeah.
I know. I almost fell off my chair. I was like, I'm the one that's for 5 years now, and you know this for a fact, because I've been getting downloads from my angels about all this. They've always told me it's all connected. That's why you know all this stuff, Lorien. It's all connected. That's what they've been telling me. Because, I was a psychic growing up, and I used to talk to ghosts and do all that, whatever. And then I got sucked into the UFO community in the 90s. So then the next thing I know, it's all connected, right?
Yeah.
So, and John sits there and says the same thing. And you know what? Every one of the guys that I deal with that are these high-level guys in the DOD who have had, whatever experiences, every one of them to a T says that is the absolute thing. It's all about consciousness. It doesn't matter about anything else. It's all about consciousness.
Yeah.
So isn't that interesting that you and I and a handful of other people have just let everything else go, because who cares, right? It's all about it all being connected. And that's where the portals are going to come in, because that's truly a connection there. It's all through consciousness. And guess what? We got to take a break. So we're going to do that. And when we come back, we're going to talk all about the portals and about how I now love John Alexander. And, and we'll be right back, folks. Welcome back, everyone, to the California MUFON Radio Show. I'm your host, Lorien Fenton. We are having a disclosure night, that's for sure. Well, I think, Grant, we should probably just kind of wrap it up with the disclosure for this evening, because what I really want to get onto is the portal thing going on with our buddy Enrique that's coming to the conference. Oh, I haven't even told anybody about that. Everybody do me a favor. Go to CA UFO Con. That's CA for California, UFOCon.com, and check out the roster. Even Lynn Buchanan, who can't travel, is going to come in on Skype and answer all your questions about as best he can. We're going to do a little interview between he and I, and then he's going to try to answer all your questions, because Disclosure is got a very interesting twist with the remote viewing group. So I hope you guys are up for that, because that's going to be quite extraordinary. And I wish I could get him there in person, but the problems that the older people are having in the UFO community, you guys have got to realize something. Grant and I are one of the youngest people in the UFO community, and we're no spring chickens, and the rest of them aren't going to be here long. So I was so unfortunate to get David Adair last year. Oh, David's going to Skype in too. I forgot. Yeah, David's going to Skype in because he wants to say hi to everybody, and we're going to play his movie as a premiere this year. I mean, it's going to be so amazing. I do hope you guys can make it, truly, because I think this year's UFO Con is just going to blow last year's apart, and last year's was pretty darn good. So anyhow, check out caufocon.com. Grant will be there, and you get to meet him in person, and you get an autographed copy of Managing Magic, which I think is everybody should have that by the side of their bed going through the next year. It'll help you get through it. Believe me. Seriously, it's like your Bible for disclosure.
Yeah. The homework, as Melinda calls it, your homework.
Yeah, your homework. We all got to have our homework. We all got to do it. That's the worst part.
Yeah.
So how did this whole portal thing start for you?
Well, it started, I did the Head to Consciousness download in 2012. And that's when I first met this woman in Phoenix. And she was in her 70s. And then she was the one that told me, oh, I've flown the craft. And I went, You what? You? And she said, yeah, I've flown 3 different models. And I'm going, did they let you fly the craft? And she said, oh, yeah. And I said, well, how do you fly a craft? And then she said, oh, you do it with your mind. And then I was really hooked into consciousness. Then I suddenly realized, like, this download I got was absolutely right, that this is the sort of the bottom line to this whole thing. This is the, so how they get here. This is how it all operates, that we sort of assume that it's a physical world, and it's not a physical world. Consciousness is primary. The physical world is secondary to consciousness. You don't have, as the dual slit experiment, you don't have a particle appear on the back wall until there's an observer. Until then, it stays as a wave. And so I was just sort of really into this sort of thing. And I'm every once in a while I get dragged back into the disclosure thing. And what happened was the Tom DeLonge thing started, and I got back in because I wanted to sort of counter his evil alien theory.
Yeah. Before we move on to the portal thing, that's the one part about the whole disclosure thing that I'm not settled with yet. I can't handle that part because, and but I could never handle Stephen Greer's "They're all good" either. So,
yeah, but see, his was like just bizarre. I mean, it was like all religions are caused by aliens, and that they're giving different religions nuclear weapon, or no, giving they weapons, and now they're giving us nuclear weapons so we can kill each other faster, and we should use nuclear weapons in outer space to take the bugs down, swat them out of the sky. And I'm going, like,
okay, now I gotta say something right there. Did Tom DeLonge ever figure out? I mean, did he ever study the Hastings? Yeah, it is Salas, isn't it? Robert Hastings and Bob Salas. Aren't those the guys at the Minot base and the other bases where they turned off and turned on the nukes?
But he tells the other story though. He tells that story, but of course he spins it the other way. He said, well, you all know the story about them turning off the nukes. He said, but the part of the story I'm going to tell you is before they turned off the nukes, they turned them on. And this is the story that George Knapp tells about in the Soviet Union, where they actually started the countdown. But it's almost like they're putting the reptilian in front of you when you're in a Malab thing. It's like they're trying to get a message across. And so when suddenly this thing starts ticking down and they're going, what the hell? How do you turn this thing off? And they're trying to turn it off. And they managed to turn it off, apparently. And then it started up again. And I mean, you talk about sending a message to the government about nuclear weapons. And so that's his thing, is they're evil because they actually turned the things on. And it wasn't that they just turned them off. And he refers to this test, this 1961 test or whatever, we actually detonated a nuclear weapon in outer space. I think it was Teller was behind it.
Yes, that's absolutely true.
It knocked out all the satellites. It knocked out everything, because what you basically end up with this sort of radioactive belt around the Earth for about 5 years. It'll take out everything we've got, and everything today, all your communications, all your TV, everything is run by satellites. It's all satellite. And but that doesn't seem to make any difference. But he's referring to this test, and that's apparently, I guess he said that one of the ships came down when they detonated this test in outer space. And so that's the way you got to fight them. It's like we're learning to put on the boxing gloves, and that's why the cover-up is taking. That's what he says. The cover-up is taking place not because of the fact that they may be up to something. It's the government is trying to hide the fact that they're learning how to fight back, and they've got the boxing gloves on, and now we're able to do it. So, but it was just a crazy idea. I said, like, he may be the most powerful guy in the world, but there's no way I'm going to go to my grave without putting some sort of thing in print that says there's another side of that story. And it may not be right that they're all good or whatever, but there's another side. Most people don't realize how crazy his theory is. Like he said, like it's the old atheist argument. It's like, and he was an atheist until I guess he got into the UFO thing, and
really?
So the idea, he said, well, he still has the idea that all destruction and all wars are caused by religion. And it's like, give your head a shake. I actually put it in the book. I said, give your head a shake. Look at the 20th century. All of the genocides, none of them had to do with religion. It was China, which was an atheist state, 78 million people in the Cultural Revolution. It was Stalin, the 20 million people killed, that he killed his own people. That was an atheist state. The killing fields of Cambodia, 1/3 of the population was killed. If you wore glasses, you were killed because you were a bourgeois and stuff like that. And that was atheist. So, I mean, almost all the genocides had nothing to do with religion. So that was the kind of stuff I sort of wanted to point out. And I also wanted to point out the fact that this was nothing new. I was there when I knew Bill Moore, and I'm trying to tell people, like, if you look, they're doing this gradual thing every year. And the fact that this evil alien thing that he's putting out is a total wacko story. And so then I sort of got back into it, and that's when I got back into the Pandolfi, because if you get into the disclosure thing, you get into the Pandolfi thing. And I learned that there was the DeLong thing, and then through talking to Chris Bledsoe, Chris said there are 6 different operations going on right now. There are 6 different disclosure operations going on, and of course the DeLong one would be one. The Pandolfi one I learned later would be one. And then you have the one in my last update, I actually point out all the portal things. I list all the portal stories that were started in movies and TV shows last year. And it's like, I don't know, 6 or 7, suddenly all the portals. And that's Chase Brandon. He's still in Hollywood. So you have these CIA people who, drop stuff into movies. If you want an idea, you do it subliminally in a movie where people are a lot less able to fight back, where you sort of drop it in when they're not really paying attention. And so they've got the portal thing. And it was when I was doing that whole scenario of all these different disclosures, and Stephen Greer, there's the story, I think Sid Goldberg, where Sid Goldberg, we're in a meeting with the Pandolfis, they're having this go-to meeting, whatever, and Ron is sitting in the background. He's not on he never is on, he never talks or anything, but he's sitting there, and that's when Sid Goldberg says, does Stephen Greer vet his material through Ron Pandolfi? And then you could hear Ron Pandolfi in the background, and he yells out, he says, what stories? And then Sid just repeats his question. He said, does he vet his material through, because Stephen Greer had made this comment after Sirius played in Los Angeles at the premiere. He said he was really angry, and he said, now I got to go back and report to Ron at the CIA UFO desk. And this would make sense. If Ron is this guy who maybe the guy has the keys, the guy that briefs the president, would Greer contact them? Absolutely. And Ron would deal with him. Ron would play with him or deal with him or help him or whatever he's going to do. And so there was his disclosure, but it was when I was doing the whole thing with Pandolfi, and that was a guy out of LA, his name is Kevin, contacted me, and he said, U.S. intelligence has asked me to contact you. And I went, oh, come on, all right. Come on, this is like crazy stuff. I mean, like, come on, I'm a Canadian. I'm not even an American. Like, why would U.S. intelligence say, oh, I'm doing this thing on the Avery, and you know about the Avery, and then it came out that it was Ron. That Ron, he wanted to do this Avery thing, and he was going to do this portal thing, which where it came in. And so I said, well, I'm willing to help you. I'll whatever you want to know. I know who these people were. I had some interaction with some of these people. I can help you, but I really don't want it because I know what happens. You're either a chess player or a chess piece, and I'd rather be the chess player, even though I really don't maybe not know that much. So then he said, he was talking about the portal, and this thing came out about the Pandolfis were talking about this portal thing, and the way they call it the wishing well. You go through and you go into another world and stuff like this. And I'm talking to him one time after I turned down this thing, and we talked on the phone, and then I said, this portal thing, this is total nonsense, whatever. And he said, no, that part of the story is true. And I went, what? It's true. And it's like, it wasn't coming from U.S. intelligence, it's coming from this guy who may be part of U.S. intelligence. I don't know. But anyway, he said, no, that part's true. He said, I've been through a portal, and it was at where Sergio lives there at Napa Valley. Apparently there was one he'd been through or whatever. So I'm going, what? It's true. There's really,
wait, stop, Grant. There's one in Napa?
Yep. Yeah, according to Kevin.
Okay, let me tell you something. I got to talk to you after the show, because guess where we're going after the conference?
Well, you're going to Napa. There you go. Yeah, it's up on a hill or something. I don't know. And they were sort of offering to take, because we were going to go to Shasta, and then we were going to stop there, and then that thing fell through. He was going to take us to wherever this thing is. But to me, it was sort of like, come on. I mean, it's like just goofy stuff. It was like, because to me it was always science fiction. I don't really watch science fiction, but I knew the idea of a portal. It was sort of like this bizarre little thing like Star Trek. We're going to, beam up through this, whatever. And to me, it was all just nonsense. And then I said, really? It's for real? And he said, no, that part's real. We're doing the documentary. And it's nonfiction. Ron had said there's been enough fiction. We're going to do nonfiction. So this documentary, and they're supposedly still working on it, which, I have my questions as to what's actually going on. And so he said the last 2 episodes are going to be on the portal. So, of course, my obvious question was, okay, so who's going on camera about the portal? And he said the princess, who's Ron Pandolfi's wife. And she's sort of the center of this portal thing. This is the story. Right.
Well, people that are listening to this right now, they don't even know what the heck we're talking about. So maybe we should go back to the beginning. And you just got your download. The lady's flying the thing. You're into consciousness. Yeah. And then how did it start that you ended up with the whole portal thing, though? And then we got to explain who these people are.
Okay,
and what the
but it still comes down to DeLong does the book, and I go back to Ron Pandolfi, because Ron Pandolfi, I've written about him. I think I even wrote about him in my 1991 book. He's always rumored to be the guy who, as the term goes, he has the keys to the classified material. He's the guy that if you want a briefing, you got to go through him.
Let's give everybody just the quick lowdown on who he is. Because people are going, who's this guy? If they haven't been paying any attention to the Tom DeLonge thing, which you'd be surprised of how many people turned off when it started. I'm not even going to listen. They don't even know who he is. So go ahead and give them the quickie on him.
So he started in the CIA. There's a story that in the CIA they have what's called the Weird Desk, or the Phenomenology Desk, which is all the stuff. It's ghosts, remote viewing, psychic phenomena, psychokinesis, firewalking, UFOs, remote viewing. It's all that stuff. It's all the same thing. It's all run out of there. So there's always been a rumor that they had this. And the guy who supposedly has run it since 1983 is Ron Pandolfi. He's a CIA. He's a physicist. The guy who ran it before him was Dr. Kit Green from 1969 to 1983, and the guy before him was Arthur Lundahl, who was the guy who did the famous briefing on the Cuban Missile Crisis for Kennedy. He was the guy who ran the lab where they analyzed all the U-2, all the SR-71 and spy photographs. He was an expert on photographs, and he was fascinated with UFOs. So you have this sort of almost like the magician, the head puppet master for UFOs, and anything that comes through the CIA in terms of briefings. For example, 1993, Rockefeller goes to the Clinton White House, and he's going to demand UFO disclosure from the president. He goes in there, and they cut him off at the pass, and he has to go through the science advisor, who was Dr. Jack Gibbons. So Gibbons understands that Rockefeller's coming to the White House, and then at that point, he has to decide, well, I got to figure what's going on here. So he requests a UFO briefing because he wants to know what the heck's going on with UFOs. Like, what's Rockefeller? What do we know? What do we tell him? And all this stuff. And the briefing, we know for a fact, goes to Ron Pandolfi. But the CIA is not into UFOs. So Ron Pandolfi gives the briefing to Dr. Bruce Maccabee, who is a Navy physicist, friend of his.
I'm a robot vacuum cleaner. So yeah, I got one gig. I suck up dirt. So pardon my inferiority complex about Geico, who does so much more. Like, not only could they save their customers money on car insurance, but they got fast and friendly claim service too. And an award-winning mobile app. Plus access to licensed agents 24/7. Who am I kidding? I can't even do corners. Uh-oh, choking hazard.
Popcorn kernels.
Geico. Expect great savings and a whole lot more.
And then the briefing suddenly is not an official government briefing. It's just some guy, physicist guy, who's spouting off about his ideas about UFOs, and that's what goes to Clinton's science advisor. And supposedly Ron Pandolfi or Kit Green or somebody goes in the back door and gives them the real briefing. So Ron has always been the guy who may have briefed the last 6 presidents on UFOs. So when the president comes in, they got to tell him. Ron goes in there, he does the briefing, and he tells them what the story is, whatever he needs to know, whatever. So he's this high-level guy, and as they say, he has the keys. So if you're and the story was, for example, if you look at the Tom DeLonge thing, the whole story was that Senator Harry Reid had started this whole thing, and that John Glenn had told Harry Reid to do this UFO thing, that he had been contacted by 2 defense intelligence agents who had been to Skinwalker Ranch and had stuff happen. And then they contacted Reid. Then he talked to John Glenn, And John Glenn said, do this UFO. Let's get some money. Let's investigate this thing. Then they talked to Senator Ted Stevens, who had a UFO sighting in World War II. And he said, I've been waiting since I got out of the Air Force to do this. And he gets on board. So they start this whole thing, and Reed gets a briefing. I know that for a fact. Reed gets a briefing. So if the briefing is done, it's going to be Ron Pandolfi or somebody that he designates who's the guy who's the expert.
Sure.
So this is who Ron Pandolfi is. So when I go back to this disclosure thing, I know that Ron's always been leaking stuff since 1991. And he's been leaking stuff to a guy by the name of Dan Smith. And Dan Smith is a guy, his father was a financial advisor to Eisenhower, very, very powerful guy at Harvard University. They gave the property up for Caltech University. Dan Smith is very, very wealthy. Dan Smith has got 2 degrees master's degrees in physics. He's into eschatology. He's into the end of the world. He's into philosophy, and he's into UFOs. And so in 1991, he has an experience which he calls the Sophie experience. He has this experience with somebody talking in his head for 10 minutes in the middle of the night, this woman, and he sort of gets obsessed. Then he gets into UFOs in 1991, and he joins MUFON, and he sees on the front cover a bunch of stuff on crop circles. So he contacts the people in England, and he contacts Robert Exler. I don't know if you remember Bob Exler.
I do. I remember the name, and I read a little bit about him. Yeah.
Ames Nassau. He contacts Exler. And Exler says, the guy you need to talk to is this guy at the CIA. So Dan Smith picks up the phone. He doesn't care. He's not afraid of anybody. He picks up the phone. He phones up Ron, and he says, I had this experience, and I'm interested in getting some answers. And Ron starts talking to him. And I was actually just watching a video of Jack Sarfati, who's in your area there.
Oh,
and
Jack
Sarfati, they did it's pretty interesting if you want to go back and review this.
I will.
Dan Smith and Jack Sarfati talk, and it's like 10 segments on YouTube. And in the second segment, he talks about this thing of phoning Ron in 1991. And so Jack says, so what was Ron's reaction when you phoned him? And he said, it was like he expected the call, because that's what happened to Jack Sarfati. If you know Jack Sarfati's story, he has this experience in 1952 where he gets this message. He's a little kid, and he's reading this book on switching circuits, and he gets this, suddenly the phone rings, and he picks up the phone, and this voice like Stephen Hawking's is on the, have you ever heard this story? It's just the most bizarre story.
No, I haven't.
So he picks up the phone, and there's this voice. He said, it sounds exactly like Stephen Hawking's voice. And they said, is this Jack? And he says, yeah, this is Jack. And they said, this is a computer on board a flying saucer. And he goes, oh, yeah, he's thinking to himself, like he's in a gang, he runs a gang in Brooklyn. And he says, it's got to be one of my gang guys, So he figures, okay, I'll play along with it. And so he's going along, and they said, we have picked the 400 top people in the world to share our experience, our knowledge with. And we have picked you, but you have to agree in order for us to pass you the information. And he said, do you agree? And he goes like, yeah, sure, whatever. And then he feels this thing going up his spine, like Kundalini, this power going up his spine.
Oh my God, I've had that. So have you. Yeah.
Well, I've never had that.
Yeah.
But, so he describes this, and then he's really interested. And anyway, he goes, gets his gang, and the flying saucer doesn't show up. But they say in 20 years, you'll start to meet the other people. So this is 1952. In 1972, he tells a story. He's teaching at UC Davis, and they're about to go to England. He's got a job in London. He's going to teach in London. And it's Sunday. He's reading the Sunday newspaper, and they're leaving on Wednesday. And suddenly he reads about Uri Geller. So he doesn't realize this is 20 years later. He reads about Uri Geller, and he says, that's kind of weird. And it's here right at Stanford University down the road. And then he says, I'm going to check this out before I go. I'm going to go check this out. And he phones SRI, where Hal Puthoff and Targ and Russell and all these guys are running the remote viewing program, which is sponsored by the CIA. Kit Green, the Weird Desk. He's the control officer of the remote viewing program. And Jack tells the story. He says, he phones up, and the guy, I can't remember the guy's name, he's dead now, but he answers the phone, and he says, this is Dr. Jack Sarfati. I just want to find out about your program. And they said, oh, Dr. Sarfati, we were hoping you would phone. And he was, you were? and so he tells the story about how he meets all these guys. And so, and they ask him, Bill Burns was doing the interview. He says, well, were these the 400 guys? And he says, Well, you figure it out. So you got, all these guys like Kit Green and Hal Puthoff and all these guys, and he gets in this group 20 years later in this thing. So that's when he says to Dan Smith, he says, sort of like when I phoned the SRI. I mean, because that's what Dan said. He said it was like he was expecting my call. He knew I was going to call. And so he starts to, he said the second conversation, he's talking to Ron Pandolfi. Remember, this is 1991. And Ron says, I'm going to Los Alamos, and I'm going to talk to the aliens. And Dan says, you are? And he says, yeah. And I'll talk to you when I get back. So, of course, Dan posted on this Paranet or whatever it was before the internet. It was like a chat board. I remember I used to be on this thing.
Oh,
and you could,
yeah, me
it was
too.
Just like,
yeah, I know
just
exactly what you're talking about.
And so
ARPANET.
he posted on this ARPANET, ARPANET was earlier, but he posted on this thing. It was the UFO boards. That's all they had was these UFO boards, like
right.
Alt Paranet and Alt UFO and all these things. And so he posted on there, and he said, my friend Ron Pandolfi said that he's going to Los Alamos and he's going to talk to the aliens there. And then he phones up Los Alamos, and guess who comes on the line?
Oh my God, who?
Take a guess. Who worked at Los Alamos?
Oh my God.
We just talked about him.
I know. What was it? God.
John Alexander.
John. I was just going to say it was John, but it was also two other guys.
Yeah, but John.
Involved,
so he phones and he says, my friend Ron Pandolfi's coming there, and they said, well, hang on, and they put John Alexander on the line. This is 1991, and he said, Is Ron Pandolfi coming to Los Alamos? And he said, yeah, he is. And he doesn't bring up the UFO thing. So when Ron gets back, all Ron says is to him, he says, next time I tell you something like that, he says, you can talk about me and you can talk about whatever, but just don't put my name and CIA in the same sentence. So it doesn't even dispute it. So he starts leaking this stuff, and it's all this plausible deniability. And Dan has said he's talked to me almost every day since 1991. For 27 years, he's talked to Ron Pandolfi. And he says Ron will leak stuff. He'll tell him stuff about this gravity wave program that he was running for the Jasons. And Dan Smith says, it's like I have my antenna up. He says, I either pick it up or I don't pick it up. He will never repeat it a second time. And everything that he's ever said to me, he will deny that he ever told me anything. And that's how he does it. So it's got this plausible deniability thing. So Dan has been leaking this stuff for years. And Dan is now the sort of the key, and all the stuff is posted on Open Minds Forum, and you get like all sorts of people, like Beckham is on there. All the people who are really interested in the stuff they're leaking comes on there, and it's all sort of like the bird code. It's all sort of embedded in people's messages and stuff like that. So anyway, I'm following Ron because of this this whole thing of disclosure that DeLong is doing this thing, and that's when the portal thing comes up. And of course, I'm more interested in the portal thing by Ron Pandolfi than I am in the Tom DeLong, because Tom DeLong is still into this hardware. The aliens are going to come down
like
the chain.
Elon Musk, just like all these guys. Let's build ships. I'm like, forget the ships. Yeah, exactly. We don't need ships.
Yeah, it's almost like the thing they're going to come down. They're going to come down the chimney and give us free energy engines.
Yeah.
Run our SUVs for free, and they're going to feed all the poor
they could
people.
have done that.
Nothing to do with that.
You and I both know that they've had that type of technology for 40 years now, at least. And they could have done it yesterday if they wanted to. It's never going to happen because of the money situation. And it's that simple. And that's what everybody hasn't figured. It's so obvious to me that until the day when we become a true socialist republic, we're never going to see it that way, folks. We're in a fascist state. I'm sorry. It's just the way it is. Anyhow, go ahead.
Yeah. So anyway, he starts talking about this portal thing, and of course, until I talked to Kevin, then Kevin said, "No, this is for real." And then I started paying attention to it, and they call it in the desert. They say it's in the desert, and I start putting all I watch everything, and that's what I do. Like I now have a list. If you include the Cosmic Club, which has 40 people, and I know some of the people for sure are in it. Like there's Diane Pasolka, and there's Jacques Vallée, and there's these people that have long been known to be a part of this group. But I have a list of 81 people, and what I say to people is what I do now that are involved with this Tom DeLong and this Pandolfi disclosure is I just sit back and I listen to these 81 people, and people say, "Oh, you can't listen to John Lear because he's this. You can't listen to this person because he's that." And I say, "No, if they're in the story, I'm listening to what everybody says. That if they have a piece of the story, I listen carefully. I don't care if they like prostitutes who pee on beds, or you like to drink, or I don't care what their vice is. All I want to know is what are they saying about portals or UFOs. So I start watching very carefully all the people around Ron and the wife. And Dan Smith, and there's this guy by the name of John, they call him the West Coast Marine. I almost know nothing about this guy, except he is the key guy with the portal. And they're talking about the portal out west, and offers to take people through. They had these go-to meetings where they were saying, who wants to go through volunteering to go through the portal, and all this kind of stuff. And I'm going like, this is just bizarre. I mean, and I actually got the impression this is for real. They actually have this kind of stuff. And then it drags in Joe Firmage. And Joe Firmage is the Mormon guy with the ISSO thing. He's the guy that financed Robert Wood with the New Majestic 12 documents,
right.
put up $250,000 to research those documents. He had this experience. And this all comes down, like with you and with me, with all these people, is in a lot of cases, people sort of go after these people because they're evil government people. And I say, no, I think a lot of these people are just experiencers. They're like Jim Semivan, the guy who's running the Tom DeLonge operation. I will guarantee people he's an experiencer. I heard his story in great detail, what happened to him in the early 1990s. He talks a little bit about it in his forward that he did for Tom DeLonge. So he's an experiencer. If you have all these people at the portal, this would all be people who have had experiences. There's a head guy at NASA who's an experiencer. And so to me, it was this key element that these people were talking about consciousness technology. This was not nuts and bolts stuff. This was the whole deal. And I actually had on, they went on a cruise ship. All these, Kevin was there, Dan Smith was there, Pandolfi and his wife were there, and the West Coast Marine was there, and they were doing these sort of video things, which they've now pulled off. They pulled all these videos because I took one. They
did pull them. I was looking for them the other day because I wanted to review them again.
They pulled all those videos. Yeah,
they're gone.
And the one Ron actually talks about portals, and that's the only time I've ever seen him on camera where he actually talks about any of the UFOs, and he talks about the portal. And what he says is his wife says to him, "So what do you say, Footman?" And that's sort of a code name. She's the princess, he's the footman, and Dan Smith is the whatever, he's the Chicken Little or whatever. And anyway, so they have all these code names, but he's the footman. She says, "What do you say, footman?" And he says, people have always wondered what it's like to go into another world. He says, the next time John, he looks over at this John guy, we don't know too much about this, John Sillison is his name. He says, next time John goes to the desert, and that's where the portal is. Next time John goes to the desert, a few of us here will join him, and we will go into the next world and come back into this world. And I'm going, wow! It's like he's on camera saying this, And I knew about this portal thing that they were supposed to go last year, and Dan Smith called it off. He said, no, it's too early for disclosure, and he called this thing off. And then there was these stories. They were in Costa Rica, and this John guy got an actuator out of one of these portals and brought it back to America. And there was this actuators at this island, St. Catherine's Island. So I started following the story very closely, and it does appear, yes, they do. And the key came down to it was that they kept indicating, and I get these indications almost every couple of days, that Joe Firmage has got some sort of portal technology, and he's a Mormon. So the Mormons believe in this planet where all the the beings come from or whatever. And so this rumored story was that he'd built this thing to go to Mormon heaven, to this planet. And because it's like they call it a wishing well. You can actually manifest when you get on the other side. You need permission from the other side to come through. But once you get in, it's like a lucid dream or like something like that, where you can actually manifest. That it's not, you're not controlled by physical. You can actually make things produce. And
what you're saying is, if I go into the portal and I say I want $1 million in change, and I want it so that I can carry it back into the next place all bagged up and ready to go, I can manifest it if they let me, and I can carry it back to this dimension, and it will be the right denomination, and everything will be the way it's supposed to be.
And that's one of the key parts that they started. And this is what I've heard from, because I've got a bunch of people who got interested. I never deal with the people firsthand. I just listen to what everybody else is saying. And I got a bunch of people who are very interested in the story and got a lot closer to me, and they were asking all these questions. But what they say is that this is not built by the government, it's built by an individual. And that the key to this is that it's got to do with your spiritual development, that they're protecting the portal against people who are going to misuse it. That there's this aspect to the thing that you can't just allow anybody to go through the portal. So there's that aspect. But one of the stories that was told by Dan Smith, now whether you can believe anything Dan Smith says, is that they manifested Trump in the portal. That they went, because he said that he was told by Ron that Trump was going to win, and this was when nobody believed Trump was going to win. He said no, Trump will win, and that's what Dan says, that they actually manifested Trump in the portal. That you can sort of manifest whatever you want. So and that's where I sort of go. Like I watch all this stuff, and some of it seems really hokey, but then I hear like that the princess went to Switzerland and she was helping the Swiss government or some, I think the Swiss government, they had a portal that she was activating. And then I just hear now Dan Smith's wife is in Malta and they're with remote viewers and they're opening another portal. And so I just sit there and listen to this stuff. And I don't think you can make this stuff up. I mean, it's because it's coming from all different sources. And I'm going like, this is my kind of stuff. And they actually have made sort of indirect offers to people. And I'm waiting for one of the people that I really trust, because there was some people that knew them better than I do, that sort of interacted with them. And I'd go to them and I'd say, do you really believe there's a portal? I mean, you're closer than I am. Do you actually think there's a portal, or is this all bullshit? And they go, no, I think there's a portal. And I go, okay, I'll stick with the story, because it's so many times it's like anything else was paranormal. It just gets so weird that you go like, oh, they got to be making this up. And yet you have this guy, and that's why I say, people will say, oh, he's kind of crazy, and he's got some weird things. Like him and his wife celebrate their wedding on the 15th or 16th of every month. Like they're always celebrating their wedding. It's like, and the people that have been with them say they're the nicest people they've ever met in their life. And yet you hear that this guy is, this high level intelligence guy, and all the stuff the CIA does and stuff like that. So I'm sort of sitting there and I'm listening to this side and that side. And generally, I think he's, the more I look at it, the more I think he's a good guy. And the people that have been around him, that have been really close to him, have come back and said, I don't know about the portal thing, but I mean, man, this is like, there's more love in this family than any family I've ever been with, and stuff like that. So I'm carefully watching it. And that's that's interesting to me, because if the portal is confirmed, that there is some sort of portal thing, then the materialistic paradigm, which is holding the whole UFO thing back, is dead. Then suddenly everybody realizes it's not nuts and bolts. The universe is made out of consciousness, and everything changes. And I always say, when this thing unravels, the people that are going to be affected the most are going to be the scientists. It's not going to be the religious people. The Vatican has already said we're ready to, baptize all the aliens and stuff. They're not really worried about this. And the government, I think, will jump right on board if it gets cleared. The people and the media will jump on this thing, because the New York Times said the story they did on the UFOs, the UFO thing was the biggest story they'd done in years. It was a massive thing. So they're going to jump on this story to make money. The people that are going to be most devastated by this thing are the people who spent $20,000 or $30,000 a year at MIT and suddenly realize that everything they learned is wrong. They've been scammed on everything. And it's not a material world. And you can get here from there. You can bypass time and space and all this stuff. And that it's, as I tell people, and Ron actually said this, a lot of people are going to be disappointed when they find out what disclosure really, what's actually going to be disclosed. And what it's going to be is going to be a lot less physical than people think, and it's going to be a lot more spiritual than people think. And I don't think a lot of people, especially the scientists, are going to be able to handle this, because I think John Alexander used this in one of his lectures. He said, in the National Academy of Sciences, which is the top 2,000 scientists in the United States, there's only 6%. Only 7% of them believe in God, and there's only 4% of them believe in paranormal phenomena. And the people, and then the rest of them, if they do believe it, don't talk about it. So people don't realize how materialistic the paradigm has got a grip on everything that happens in this world in terms of our knowledge. And this will devastate it. The portal thing will totally devastate it, because it says, man, this is a different world. That these whatever this intelligence is popping out of these things. Even if you heard Eric Davis talk about the portals that opened at Skinwalker Ranch, and this thing popped out, and he seemed to be the sort of the focus of the thing. A lot of people, nothing happened around, like John Alexander, nothing really happened around him. But Eric Davis, who's this astrophysicist, PhD astrophysicist, very sharp guy, is talking about this and describing the fact that this is is for real. That this is how they're getting here, and they're coming in and out of these portals, and that just destroys the cover up. And I say the cover up is the scientists, because everybody's afraid of the scientists. None of the scientists. That's why they have this cosmic club thing where nobody identifies themselves, because they're afraid they're going to lose their tenure, they're going to lose their grants, they're going to come under ridicule from all their people. That's why nobody in the CIA who believes will talk about it, because their career is on the line. That's what they told Jim Semivan when he had his experience in 1991. He went to George Tenet, and George Tenet, he said, "I need to know what's going on." And George Tenet said, "You do not want this. Pretend this is a one-off. Do not go down this road. Your career will be over. You will be ridiculed. Leave it alone." And he left it alone. And then the story I heard was when he retired, he was given the briefing by Ron Pandolfi as to what's actually going on. And he went operational. And now he's operational, running the Tom DeLonge operation.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, you know what, Grant? Now, this is very interesting that you bring up this type of portal, because Enrique and all the guys at the Rama Foundation and all these people, they're having a whole different type of portal thing happening.
Yeah,
now,
they've got the Xandra. That's why I was more interested.
Yeah.
We didn't get into Xandras. And
we got about 20 minutes left, so let's talk about the Xandras. So I'm trying to correlate the two.
Yeah, and that's why a lot of times I've given up on the portal thing. I'm going like, this is absolute nonsense. They're just jerking us around with this stupid portal story. And
I think it's real.
Oh, yeah, it's real.
Yeah.
But the thing is, are they ever going to show it to anybody? Because you've talked to Dan Smith. He's the spokesman. You can't get anything through. You have to go through Dan Smith. And Dan Smith's never been in a portal. And then Dan Smith will say, well, it could be animal, vegetable, mineral. It could be in your mind. And it's like, why are we listening to you? I want to talk to somebody who's actually been in a portal. You have never been in a portal. You don't know anything. You know nothing more about a portal than I do. And I'm trying to figure out what's going on. So when the Xandra story broke, and this is a story that I got dragged into by synchronicity, by these weird things that happen in this world. And that was when I released a book called Charlie Red Star, which was the story of my sightings in 1975, which I had held for 30 years. My sister held it for 25 years and then gave it back to me. And then I decided there was a woman, it's a long story, had a bizarre experience. She wanted to publish the book. I said, okay. So we published the book through a publisher, and I go along with the whole thing. And it's August of last year, and I'm going to Mount Shasta because Katerina, a friend of mine who helped me put up some of my books, did some editing for me. She's a Latino. All these Latinos show up on Mount Shasta, and they do these meditation for world peace, and they come from all around the world. And so she said, "Oh, we got to go to this meditation for world peace." And these contactees, they're, a lot of these people, they're, South American contactees. And I'm thinking, I got nothing against meditation. I got nothing against world peace. But I don't think I want to go 40 hours across the country to sit on the side of a mountain and meditate for world peace. So I really wasn't interested. But because she'd helped me, I said, okay, I'll support Katerina. I'll go to Mount Shasta and I'll sit on the side of a mountain and I'll meditate for world peace. So we start this trip. So Desta lives in Winnipeg here. So I said to Desta, "You want to come?" She said, okay. So we traveling across the desert, and we're heading for Reno. We're going to stop in Reno, and we're in the desert heading towards Reno, and the phone rings. Desta's cell phone rings, and she says, "Oh, it's Katerina." And then Katerina works in a law office. Now she's in Washington, near the Pandolfi. She's working in the same law office in Washington, D.C., but she was in L.A. at the time. And she said, it's 12:13. I got a message from Paula Harris, and the message is from Ricardo Gonzalez, who's this contactee. From a very famous contactee from he's now in Argentina, was Peru originally, and It's from Ricardo, and he has a message from Aunt Terrell, and Aunt Terrell is an alien, and from the planet Apu, and there's a message from Aunt Terrell to Grant, and the message is Aunt Terrell knows that Grant's coming to the mountain, and there will be a program sighting on Saturday night, and Grant should let people know. So, of course, I'm saying to Desta, make sure you get what exactly is the message. Because I know you put this on Facebook and it's going to take off, and I'm in the middle of this thing. Exactly what is the message? And the message was, I'm supposed to let people know. So I put it up, and of course, then I get attacked. It's about world peace. It's not about, a circus and all this stuff. No, the message said, I'm supposed to tell people there's going to be a program sighting on Saturday night. And I already knew that Paula had been in what they call a Xandra. She had told the story at Consciousness Expo. I had first heard her tell the story, and she said, "Oh, I was there, and the same contactee guy, Ricardo Gonzalez, had called me out of, they have a group of about 180 people all meditating, and it's freezing cold. Like, it's unbelievably cold up there. And everybody's meditating and oming and stuff, and they're trying to raise the vibration, and the UFO flies, and they have these antennas. They call them antennas. And these are very highly psychic people who will tell you not only where the sighting will take place, but to the minute when it will take place. And there was 2 antennas on the night I was there. August the 19th was the night when my event happened, that said it would happen at 9:33 on the Saturday night. So we go there, and I'm anticipating, because I know Paula had this experience where in 2014, 2015, she gets called out of this meditation group, and they say Aunt Terrell, the same one that I got the message from, Aunt Terrell is in the forest, and he wants you to come. Are you ready for this? And Paula freaks out, and they're basically carrying her. She can barely walk, and she's just freaking out. She doesn't know what to do. They take her, and what's called a Xandra. So this is like a portal, but this is better than a portal, because I even told the people that I was working with the Pandolfi thing. I said, you're giving me this nonsense about animal, mineral, vegetable, and it could be in your mind, and all this kind of stuff. And that means nothing to me. A Xandra, I know, because they say it's like 40 feet across, and they describe this bluish white mist that's coming off the ground. That it's completely dark. In 2014, there was no moon. It was black as could be, and this whitish blue mist is coming off the ground, and it's lighting up the forest, the bottom of the forest. And they're there,
wow.
and there's 7 people allowed in the Xandra at a time. So they're going, and Ricardo. There's all these women, and I know all the players, because I actually interviewed most of them, and they were to hold hands, and they were told, until you cross over that mist, until you're on the other side of the mist, do not let go. And this Paula's telling me the story, and I'm going, what? I said, you're a famous UFO researcher. You got to tell people this story. She said, no, it's not about me. I don't want to tell this story. I don't want people to know about this stuff. And I said, you got to tell people you actually saw this thing. And then she finally went ahead and told the story. So she said they're holding hands. And Ricardo says, until you get through this mist, do not let go. So she goes through the mist, and then she said it was the hardest thing she ever did in her life was to let go of these women's hands. Karina was on one side, and Saul, and all these women. So she lets go, and she looks up, and there's this alien, Aunt Terrell. He's about 10 feet tall. He's wearing a very tight suit. He's got this crest that has these sparks coming off it. He's got this whitish sort of hair. And so she tells me this story. And when we're there last August, before the event happened that night, I go into the forest. And I put these things on my YouTube channel. I got the interview, 22-minute interview. We're in the forest. She's showing me where the aliens were, how many aliens. There's these little aliens running around with these iPads that were poking out from behind trees and stuff like this. And I'm going, really? It's like, and there was 10 witnesses. And I'm going, wow. She said, well, most of them are here. I said, they are? Let's go. So we go, and she's talking these people into being interviewed. I'm interviewing these people on camera, and I'm going, were you in the Xandra? Oh, yeah, I was in there. What did you see? Oh, there was this guy. He was about 10 feet tall. And they're all telling me the same story. And these little beings running around and stuff. I guess I'm going, I simply said, like, this is the most amazing story I've ever heard in my life. Because it's not like the portal thing. It's like, oh, well, it could be this, could be that. I mean, you never know. You could do it with your mind and stuff. This, I know. It's like 40 feet across. It's got a dome. And it's like an interdimensional bubble that the aliens create. And then the people go into this bubble. And then I started to learn. And
we got to tell people it's raising their vibration up to the level that they're at. They're actually in their dimension. Yeah. Yeah, and they're just popping into ours in a crossover point.
Yeah, it's almost like their vibration. That's the whole idea that people are always waiting for the big mass landing. And I've actually given the landing. They're not going to be no mass landing. They can't exist in this because they're at a different vibration. And they can't even. So they come in, so that's what the Xandra idea, but they're just speculating on this. Now, it makes sense that they're at a high vibration, and that's why they do this oming, and that's why they do this meditation thing and this oming and stuff like that, to get the vibration up, and they raise our vibration up. The aliens bring their vibration down. They meet in this Xandra thing, and they could only last for a few minutes.
Attention shoppers, clean up on aisle 14. Clean up on aisle 14. Someone dropped a jar of pickles. Pickles. Kosher pickles.
Beatboxing at a big box store. Surprising. What's not surprising? How much you could save by switching to Geico.
A red minivan has the lights on in the parking lot.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Geico.
And these, according to them, they had some people have described a ship that shoots 3 beams down, and the Xandra appears. And the way they described it is they called them the engineers. And I talked to the people who had these little aliens that were poking around, and they were running, and they described it. They're running around like they had iPads, and they believed that they were the ones that were making the Xandra, that were holding the Xandra together as these people were in it. So Paul had this experience 2014, 2015, and both times there was like 9 or 10 witnesses. And I was going to these people, and I'm going, everybody was telling the same story about exactly what they saw in the Xandra. And I said, now this story you can actually do something with. This is and then I was talking to Joe Burks, and Joe Burks says, "Oh, there's this guy that flew the 747 United Airlines pilot. Oh, he was in one of these things. They had one up in Northern California, and there was 50 people went through the Xandra." I go, "Are you kidding me? 50 people went through, and they went in groups of 7. And then I learned about one in Uruguay, 125. And I'm watching Sixto Paz, who's one of the main guys. He's showing a video of a picture of the Xandra, and I'm going, whoa." And so I just interviewed Enrique.
Enrique Villanueva.
Yeah, who's going to be at your conference.
Exactly.
And I got him talking about portals. Forget about all this other stuff. Let's talk about portals. Let's talk about the aliens that they saw last year at the event, because we were on one side of the road. And we had this flashing light thing on his side of the road. It was like the circus, man. I mean, he had aliens. This other guy had aliens. They had the portal appeared. They got a picture of the portal, and it was just like, wow. I mean, and so he was telling me about his Xandra experience, and I said, "Have you ever been in a Xandra?" "Oh, I've been in those things." And that's the way these Latino people talk. And the only reason people don't know the story because it's a Latino story. It's all in Spanish. And so I've got this Katerina who's Latino, so she's helping me translate. We're talking to these people and all over the place, and these things are all over the place. And then Enrique actually sent me one from 2013 from Shasta. He said, "Oh, here's a picture of a Xandra at Shasta," and I'm going, oh my goodness! It's like I'd never seen it before, and he sent it to me after we did the interview about a month ago. We haven't posted the interview yet, but just a fascinating interview. And Enrique, there's no doubt this guy's telling the truth. I mean, he's the most honest sounding guy telling these stories, very humble, whatever. And because we had our event at 9:33, and I knew he'd had an event at 9:08, so I said, "Oh, tell me about the event at 9:08. Was it Saturday night?" He said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, this is like 20 minutes before our event. Tell your event." And he tells this bizarre story that maybe you can get him to tell at the conference. Just absolutely bizarre with aliens and orbs going around and stuff like this. And this girl that disappears. She's against this tree.
Yeah, he told me about that. Yeah. That was so bizarre.
And that happened at 9:08. And he had it in his mind. It was 9:08. And the other thing he had was they do this thing where he's an antenna. When he was young, he tried to be an antenna. And the alien said, "You're not the antenna. The antenna will be picked. You're not the antenna, the person that gets all the messages." And so he learned to do this antenna, and he actually produced, I don't know if you've seen it, in this year, in 2017, he had a download of a thing that he draws out, and 2 days later, that exact description, that exact thing showed up in a crop circle in England. And it's a very complex formation. And you look at his drawing, and you look at the crop circle, and you go like, wow, it's just like unbelievable. And so then I said, "Are you doing it again this year?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Are you doing the same weekend as Ricardo?" And he said, "No." I said, "Okay, I'm coming." And then he said, he's going to do his with Sixto Paz. And Sixto Paz is the guy that started this whole thing in 1974. Right. And I'm going, Enrique and Sixto Paz, I mean, I would drive around the world to see that. And I'm going like, wow, I could hardly wait. It's the middle of August up at Mount Shasta. And this time I'm going to dress. I'm going to have like 2 layers of clothes. I'm going to have the bandana. I'm going to have the
I've been up there in August, and the elevation they're at, it's freezing cold at night, man.
During the day it's hot. At night it's just unbelievable. So anyway, they're having this event, and that's the whole thing of the Xandra. And so I'm doing a book on the events. There was 2012, 2013, Sala was involved in 2013, 14, 15, the aliens appeared. 2016, I have this woman from Mexico who had the alien in the crystal shop down below, this tall alien walking around, and nobody's paying attention. Just
that's because she was the only one that could see him, right?
Yeah. But it's this bizarre story. It's like I said, in 42 years, there's no story that even comes close to the story of the Xandra. And you have actual witnesses that will actually tell you, yes, I saw this, I was there. And when you take the 2014, 2015, both of them had 10 witnesses. This is not like one person. The 10 people in this Xandra that actually will tell you, yes, there was an alien. This is what he looked like, and they all are describing the same thing. It's just wild, wild story. Whereas the portal story, I mean, there's a chance that we may be able to go through a portal because there's these sort of offers that, you know, people that, you know, if you're at the right vibration, they decide they're going to let you through or whatever. I wouldn't mind that. But the Xandra story for the average person, when you see the pictures, we have pictures and videos of portals or of Xandras, and we have none of the, well, yeah, we even have some of the aliens, but it's the classic alien. They're not that clear. And pictures inside the Xandras, there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, the thing that intrigues me about the Xandras, and this also has to do with Gary Parker, it has to do with me. I told you the story about when I was about 20 years old and the lady came through my wall in this white, glittery, glowing tunnel and came at me, and I was so flipped out. Now, I was out of my body, I got to say, but that means I'm vibrating at a different frequency, right? Yeah. So that's where I picked up on the fact that the aliens don't necessarily, this isn't a ship thing. This is way beyond a ship thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what Valet has been saying for years. And I used to think he was crazy. And now this is the whole thing and that's what John is saying. That's his whole thing, is that this is going to do with consciousness. And for him to go out on the edge and say that, this is basically absolutely true. And people have to understand this, that unless you understand about consciousness, you ain't going anywhere in terms of figuring out UFOs. We've done it for 70 years. We've watched lights in the sky. We've tried to measure. And that's what Jim Semivan said. And this is a guy who had the experience. And this is what he says. He says, the idea that you can measure this thing is laughable. How do you define something where there does not appear to be any there? This has got to do with consciousness. This has got to do with multidimensionality, and it's beyond our present science. And that's coming from this high-level guy who was an SES-2, a two-star general in the White House, a high-level guy, had his own experience, and people have to understand that consciousness is the key to this whole problem.
That's right. That's what they told me in all my downloads. So, it's a very interesting conundrum, though, because this portal thing intrigues me a lot, just like you're saying. But then we've got the Xandras, and we've also got, and I got a guy that I don't know if you know about yet, but his name's Gary Parker. Have you ever heard of him?
No.
Now, okay, he had an experience a few years back where he got a voice talking in his head and said, go down to the river and scream this chant. Okay. So he goes down to the river and screams a chant, and a being appears to him on a crystal platform, and he's really big, and there's all this stuff going on. But basically, he was creating a Xandra. Yeah. And this alien sitting in this thing, and what's so bizarre to me is that we can do these Xandra things and see the aliens and communicate with them. I don't hear the portal people talking about any aliens on the other side. Yeah. They say it's a different world they're going into. So maybe they're two completely different things. What do you think?
Yeah, they could be, because it doesn't sound the same sort of thing. And they have these actuators and stuff, whereas the beings seem to be able to make these things appear wherever they want. Like people say, well, there's portals and they're on top of these mountains and they're in people's backyards and stuff. And I go, no, these aren't on specific places. This is wherever they decide to pop the thing out.
Exactly. Like my bedroom wall.
Yeah, they make like an interdimensional bubble, and that's where they come through. And you get to the vibration. So when your mind is quiet, so it'll usually happen at night. When your mind is quiet, you're out of your body, you're dreaming or whatever. That's what Bashar, the famous channeler, says. We come to you in your dreams because now you're in our world.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Man, I can't wait till the conference this year. I'm telling you.
It's exciting.
If nobody else shows up, we're all going to have a great time.
Oh, we'll get lots of people there. Because by then it'll be moving, because they're claiming that they're going to drop these films. And I've heard one thing. And if what happens, this thing is going to be front page news big time one more time. And really? They said January, and it'll happen on a Sunday. But we'll see. I don't want to sort of upset the thing. It must be in the. They
said February on a Sunday.
No, I heard
January.
Well, in January. I heard it'd be January. I knew it wouldn't be early because it's the Christmas thing. It's like the Blue Book. They shut Blue Book down at the end of the year because there's no reporters around. But I was told, well, Chris said that. Chris said that this thing is just to prick the bubble, and he's on the inside, and he does have very high level contacts in there. And he said this thing is about to get really, really big. They're about to drop this thing. This is just to get people's taste in this thing. And he was talking January. And Gary Nolan, if you go to Gary Nolan's Facebook page, the DNA guy from Stanford, who's part of this program that watches experiencers DNA and their mind things with Kit Green and Putoff. If you take a look at, he says same thing. He's saying this thing is about to blow. That you haven't. I think he says you haven't seen anything yet.
Oh, geez, this is going to be so amazing.
So by the time your conference comes, everybody's going to want to see what the latest update is, because I'll do an update. And I mean, right now I'm doing an update every 2 days, but I'll do an update there for people that they will get the latest. We'll go through the whole thing, and they'll have the latest on what's going on, because I have a lot of contacts. I have 81 people that I'm watching on this story, and there's a lot of stuff happening that we got to sort of let them spin their thing out, but I have, great faith that we are going to get, and it doesn't really matter whether the videos are true or whatever. They have changed consciousness by what they've done. I mean, they have moved the ball down the field, I'll tell you. And they're going to do it again. That's what I'm told. Lots of times. Exactly.
They've either moved the ball down the field or they're getting ready to set off a nuclear explosion. It's one of the two. The least of consciousness explosion. Oh my God. Well, Grant, thank you for being here. This has been really wonderful, and thank you so much. I know you're tired of it all, but it seems it's very intriguing, and it really is going to change the world. So I'm glad that we're part of that.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's as I always tell people, I will end up with this. I always tell people, if you understand the UFO story and what's really going on, you are in the Super Bowl of all stories, and you better appreciate that you got to play in the game.
Yeah, exactly. I do. I thank God every day, or the AI, or whatever, or the aliens. I thank them all, and I just say thank you for letting me, be in part of this. It's fun.
That's right.
Thank you, darling. I'll talk to you soon. And MJ, take us out, and I'll see you guys all next week here on the California MUFON Radio Show. Have a great